Ferrari came to Canada expecting comeback. Instead, the entire SF-26 started collapsing in front of the paddock. Charles Leclerc could not trust the brakes. Lewis Hamilton delivered what he called his best qualifying lap since joining Ferrari, and still ended almost 3/10 behind George Russell. Mercedes looked untouchable. McLaren looked stronger. And hidden inside the numbers was a brutal reality Ferrari can no longer hide. They are down as much as 25 horsepower to Mercedes. At a power circuit, that is catastrophic. And somehow it gets worse. While Mercedes arrived with massive upgrades, Ferrari brought absolutely nothing new to Canada. No new floor, no new aero package, no breakthrough solution. They showed up with the exact same car that already failed to keep up in Miami. Then the weekend spiraled. Leclerc admitted he was entering corners, hoping not to go straight on because the brakes felt so unpredictable. Hamilton was forced to overdrive the car just to reach 5th place. And the deeper engineers looked into Ferrari's data, the more terrifying the picture became. The SF-26 is not only slower, it may be fundamentally broken under the new 2026 regulations. Because right now, Ferrari are losing the engine battle, the development battle, and possibly even the psychological battle inside the garage itself. The moment Ferrari arrived in Montreal, there was already pressure surrounding the team. But by Saturday evening, that pressure had turned into something much darker. Because Canada exposed every weakness Ferrari were trying to hide. The sprint race revealed the first warning signs immediately. Lewis Hamilton started 5th. Charles Leclerc started 6th. On paper, that sounds respectable. The reality was brutal. Both Ferrari drivers were completely unable to fight the top 4 cars ahead of them. Mercedes and McLaren simply disappeared up the road, while the SF-26 looked trapped in another category entirely. And the numbers tell the story better than anything else. Leclerc finished almost 10 seconds behind George Russell after only 23 sprint laps. Hamilton crossed the line more than 10 seconds behind as well. That gap is terrifying. Because in Formula One, losing 10 seconds in such a short race usually means one thing. The car fundamentally lacks pace. Not strategy, not traffic, pure performance. And here's what made the situation even more alarming inside Ferrari. Hamilton actually looked better than expected. The 7-time world champion was extracting everything possible from the SF-26. He recovered pace after a mid-race mistake, stayed close to Leclerc, and looked increasingly comfortable with the car under heavy braking zones. Normally, that would be positive news. But in Canada, it created another uncomfortable question. If Hamilton is driving this well and Ferrari are still nowhere near Mercedes, how bad is the car really? That question became impossible to ignore during qualifying. Because while Mercedes locked out the front row, Ferrari's entire weekend started collapsing publicly. Hamilton somehow dragged the car into 5th place with a lap he later called his best qualifying performance since joining Ferrari. That statement matters enormously. Hamilton has struggled emotionally at several moments adapting to Ferrari machinery. So for him to finally sound genuinely positive about the SF-26 should have been a breakthrough moment. Instead, it accidentally exposed the real scale of Ferrari's problem. Even Hamilton's best lap was still nearly 3/10 slower than Russell's pole time. At the front of Formula One, 3/10 can feel like an eternity, especially at a circuit built around power and braking confidence. And nobody suffered more than Charles Leclerc, because while Hamilton found rhythm, Leclerc entered complete survival mode. The Monégasque driver spent the entire weekend fighting brake problems severe enough that he openly admitted he was approaching corners hoping the car would actually stop correctly. Think about how insane that sounds in Formula One. A Ferrari driver entering one of the most dangerous braking circuits of the season without trusting the brakes. That is not a setup issue anymore. That is fear. And fear destroys lap time instantly. Especially at a place like Gilles-Villeneuve, where confidence under braking changes everything. One hesitation into the final chicane. One tiny moment of uncertainty before the hairpin. That alone can destroy an entire lap. And Leclerc's nightmare kept getting worse. At one point in qualifying, he actually produced the fastest first sector of anyone on the grid. Purple sector, fastest of all. Then the lap collapsed. Dirty air from another car disrupted the Ferrari's aerodynamic balance, the braking confidence disappeared again, and Leclerc fell all the way to 8th position. That sequence perfectly summarized Ferrari's entire season. Moments of potential, then immediate collapse. And hidden underneath all this chaos was the most dangerous problem of all. The engine deficit. because according to the technical analysis surrounding the Canadian weekend, Ferrari may currently be down between 22 and 25 horsepower compared to the Mercedes power unit. That is enormous. To simplify it, imagine two runners competing in a sprint while one is forced to carry a backpack the entire race. No matter how talented the second runner is, eventually physics wins. That is what Ferrari looked like in Canada. The SF-26 simply could not compete on the straights. Mercedes reached significantly higher top speeds before braking zones. Ferrari struggled especially with electrical energy deployment under the new regulations, making the problem even worse over long straights. And here's where the story becomes even more painful for Ferrari fans. While every major rival arrived in Canada with upgrades, Ferrari brought nothing. No new floor, no major aerodynamic package, no emergency fix, nothing. Because after previous development failures earlier in the season, Ferrari reportedly became too cautious to risk introducing more parts without fully understanding why the car correlation had already gone wrong. That sounds responsible technically. Competitively, it may be catastrophic. The most alarming part of Ferrari's weekend in Canada was not the qualifying result. It was the realization that the team may not even understand how to fix the SF-26 quickly anymore. Because once Formula One teams stop bringing upgrades, that usually signals something deeper than caution. It signals confusion. And Canada exposed that confusion everywhere. While Mercedes arrived with one of the most aggressive development packages of the season, Ferrari stood still completely. McLaren evolved the car. Red Bull kept adjusting performance areas. Ferrari changed nothing. That decision shocked people inside the paddock. Because Formula One development is like running on a moving treadmill. The moment you stop improving, everyone else immediately starts pulling away. That is exactly what happened in Montreal. Mercedes looked sharper. McLaren looked more complete. Ferrari looked frozen. And this is where the situation becomes genuinely dangerous for Lewis Hamilton. Because Hamilton did not join Ferrari to fight for fifth place while hoping rivals make mistakes ahead. He joined believing Ferrari could eventually build a championship car around him. But Canada raised a brutal possibility. What if the foundation itself is wrong? The SF-26 is not struggling in only one area. That would be manageable. The car is showing weaknesses everywhere simultaneously. Braking confidence issues, engine deficit, electrical deployment inefficiency, lack of top speed, no upgrade momentum. That combination is deadly under the new regulations. And the engine problem may be the most frightening part of all. According to the technical analysis from the weekend, Ferrari are struggling heavily with the new 2026 electrical system requirements, especially how the MGUK recovers and redeploys energy on circuits with long straights like Canada. That sounds complicated, so simplify it like this. Imagine two phones starting the day with full batteries. One charges itself quickly every time you stop using it for a few seconds. The other charges slowly and drains faster whenever you open demanding applications. Eventually, the second phone starts running out of power exactly when you need maximum performance. That is basically what Ferrari looked like in Montreal. The SF-26 could survive through corners reasonably well at times, but the moment long straights arrived, the weakness became impossible to hide. And Gilles Villeneuve punishes that weakness brutally. The circuit has massive acceleration zones followed by violent braking areas. If your energy deployment is inefficient, you lose speed everywhere. By the time Ferrari reached the end of the pit straight, the Mercedes cars were arriving up to 20 kilometers per hour faster before braking. That is catastrophic in Formula One, because higher top speed does not only improve overtaking, it changes everything. Defending becomes easier. Tire management improves. Drivers carry less stress during battles. Strategy opens up completely. Ferrari had none of those advantages. And internally, the frustration is clearly growing. Charles Leclerc sounded defeated after qualifying. Not angry, defeated. His comments about entering corners, hoping the car would stop properly revealed something Formula One drivers almost never admit publicly. He does not trust the car anymore. That destroys confidence instantly. And confidence is everything in Formula One. A driver without confidence brakes earlier, turns more cautiously, avoids aggressive inputs, loses tense everywhere without even realizing it. That is why Leclerc's situation feels so serious right now. Because Canada exposed a psychological crack, not only a technical one. Meanwhile, Hamilton looks strangely different. For the first time since arriving at Ferrari, he sounded genuinely optimistic about the car balance after qualifying. He even called it his best qualifying lap with Ferrari so far. That should have been encouraging. Instead, it became another terrifying sign for Ferrari. Because if Hamilton finally feels comfortable, and the car is still nowhere near the front, then maybe the ceiling of the SF-26 is simply much lower than Ferrari expected. That possibility changes the entire season. And hidden underneath all this pressure is another massive problem Ferrari do not want to face publicly yet: politics. Because while Ferrari struggle technically on track, they are simultaneously fighting major political battles off track too. Ferrari strongly opposed the proposed 2027 engine regulation changes, supported by Mercedes and Red Bull. And once you understand why, the panic inside Ferrari starts making much more sense. The political war now surrounding Ferrari may actually explain why the team looks so nervous in Canada. Because this is no longer only about one bad weekend. This is about Ferrari realizing the future regulations themselves may already be turning against them. And that possibility is terrifying inside Maranello. While Mercedes and Red Bull are pushing aggressively for Formula One to change the 2027 engine balance earlier than expected, Ferrari are fighting desperately to stop it. That disagreement sounds technical. In reality, it is a battle for survival. Here's why. Under the current regulations, the power unit uses a 50-50 balance between thermal combustion power and electrical energy. Mercedes and Red Bull reportedly want Formula One to shift earlier toward a 60-40 balance that favors more combustion power. Ferrari and Audi strongly oppose that move. And once you understand Ferrari's current problems, their panic suddenly makes perfect sense. Because right now, Ferrari are already struggling massively with electrical energy deployment under the 2026 system. Their MGUK efficiency and battery management appear weaker than Mercedes, especially on long straights like Canada. So imagine spending years designing an engine philosophy around one set of rules, only for the sport to suddenly change direction before you recover performance. That is Ferrari's nightmare. And it gets even worse. Ferrari reportedly designed major parts of their future engine architecture around the current regulations already. If Formula One changes the balance too early, Ferrari may be forced to restart huge areas of development almost from zero. That is catastrophic financially, catastrophic technically, and potentially catastrophic for Hamilton's final championship hopes too. Because time is the one thing Ferrari no longer has. Lewis Hamilton did not join Ferrari for a long rebuilding project. He arrived believing the team could challenge quickly under the new era. But Canada exposed something much more worrying. Mercedes appear ahead technically. McLaren are improving rapidly. Red Bull remain dangerous. Ferrari are arguing about future regulations while their current car is already collapsing. That is an awful combination. And the emotional contrast between both Ferrari drivers made the situation even more uncomfortable. Hamilton sounded hopeful after qualifying. Relaxed, almost relieved, finally feeling connected to the SF-26 for the first time. Leclerc sounded exhausted, frustrated, mentally drained by constantly fighting a car he clearly does not trust anymore. That emotional split inside a team can become dangerous very quickly. Because Formula One garages always gravitate toward momentum. If Hamilton continues adapting while Leclerc keeps struggling with confidence issues, internal pressure inside Ferrari could shift dramatically over the next few races. And that possibility would have sounded impossible only months ago. Leclerc was supposed to be Ferrari's future cornerstone, the driver perfectly matched to the new regulations, the natural leader of the team after Hamilton's arrival. Now suddenly, Canada created another uncomfortable question. What if Hamilton adapts faster to Ferrari than Ferrari adapts to the regulations themselves? That changes everything psychologically, especially because Hamilton's strengths match exactly the areas Ferrari still desperately need to solve. Heavy braking, race management, extracting performance from unstable cars. These are qualities he developed during difficult Mercedes seasons too. Leclerc, meanwhile, thrives most when the car feels sharp, responsive, and predictable under braking. The SF-26 currently feels like none of those things. And the deeper Ferrari falls behind Mercedes in straight-line speed, the worse the situation may become mentally for both drivers. Because eventually, drivers stop believing victories are possible. That is the point every elite team fears most. Not losing pace, losing belief. And Canada may have been the first weekend where Ferrari genuinely looked like a team beginning to lose confidence in its own project. No upgrades, no clear solution. Brake problems unresolved. Engine deficit exposed publicly. Political battles off track. and rivals evolving faster every single weekend. That is not one problem anymore. That is systemic collapse, which is why the Canadian Grand Prix may end up being remembered as the weekend Ferrari finally realized the SF-26 was not only behind. It may already be falling apart under the weight of Formula One's new era.